on my way to get groceries, and I was listening this afternoon to a lecture on the YouTube. At least this is where I'm getting his information. Um, Dr. Carr, like Carr, he has a YouTube channel called Narrative with a K and N. I'm only laughing because I'm Nerd Queen with a K and a W. All right, so he was giving a lecture this week, um, and his title was Slaves Without Masters. And I guess in recognition of Black History Month, part of his lecture was about George Washington and how when they were moving, I believe the United States Capitol from New York to Philadelphia, and they were trying to build things like that. How George Washington, had slaves, and I really hope people know that, because I've been trying to tell people, even friends of mine, for years, that kind of thing. But anyway, so he tried to find a loophole to keep his slaves or enslaved people, because I don't like calling people like that's not their lot in life. They were trafficked and they were kidnapped. So how Washington tried to find a way to keep the people that he was enslaving, while still being in Philadelphia, because I guess around at that time they were outlawing the practice of chattel slavery. Okay. Um, in Washington, one of the loopholes he had was that he had those slaves in his wife's name. That was one of the ways, even though technically, I guess, women could not own property back then. But that was one of the loopholes. And then another loophole was the fact that he didn't have to say they belong to my wife, kind of thing. But anyway, so in the midst of him trying to keep his property, he had to move them away from Philadelphia. One got away. No, actually two, excuse me. Two got away. I wasn't paying close attention to the second one, but the first one, person, Hercules, he got away while in transport, as in while they were trying to move them back to Virginia, I believe, where slavery was still legal. He found his way and got away. Hercules also had his son there, and he didn't get away, his son. That's what I mean by chattel slavery. So I know a lot of people will come into my comments and talk about, well, Irish people were slaves and there was slavery back then in the Roman times. I'm like, yes, but what I'm talking about is chattel slavery. So if you're going to learn anything this here Black History Month, you're going to learn that chattel slavery is not like the slavery of the ancient world. Chattel slavery was a system that forced people to remain in slavery their entire lives, and their offspring and their children, that means, okay? So while there was, yes, slavery in the Roman times or ancient times, and yes, there was people of different races as slaves, what I am talking about, this system of chattel slavery, was a system that was designed to keep people trafficked for their entire life, and their children for their entire life. That's what I'm talking about. Okay? So before anybody jumps in the comments, being weird. All right, so yes, so one of Washington's people he kidnapped and trafficked got away. His son was also on that trip, and he wasn't able to get away. Um, that Hercules, he had a daughter, and these are quotes, and I'm going to jump into something else in a minute, but they say that his daughter at the time, when after he escaped Hercules, he went off and he ended up doing pretty well for himself, but he left behind at least 2 children, and that's unfortunate. And they had asked the one of the children, the daughter, at the time she was 6, and they asked her, "Aren't you sad that your dad is gone?" She's like, "Well, yeah, I'm sad that he's not here, but I'm glad he's free." And that's from a 6-year-old child. Okay. Just saying. All right. And I highly recommend you watching or listening to that lecture from Dr. Carr today. Like it just finished live, and I was trying to watch or listen to the rebroadcast before I head out today. So yeah, so that's what I'm listening to. So when it comes to slavery without masters, he talked about that. Then towards the end, which I paused, he talked about how people can enslave themselves mentally and spiritually. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. How people want to believe a narrative about something. Like the whole idea of the United States being the land of the free and the home of the brave, which is not true. We want it to be true, but it's not true. Okay? Interesting. If anybody's asking, I'm driving a Buick right now. But anyway, a Buick. Um, but I've let's see, how can I say this? I work in a field where I have access to lots of different populations of people and get to see and hear different viewpoints and work with coworkers. I will say I've been lucky enough to work with coworkers who have evolved in their thinking and understanding of multiple viewpoints of and perspectives of others. Okay, there is a first responders vehicle in need of coming through here right now. Okay. So I've watched the evolution, and what I've come to realize is that and I feel sorry for them, because as a Black person in the United States, my whole life, I've already knew that there was multiple Americas. And sadly, there are and still is, populations of people who have the luxury, and I guess people use that word privilege, of not knowing other people's perspective or having to hear other people's perspective on the United States. Okay. I'm not going to name names, but I can recall this one woman who I worked with or still work with, how she had mentioned growing up, like, it's a part of your national duty to care about the United States and stand up for the pledge and put your hand over your heart and celebrate every 4th of July and make sure that you respect the founding fathers and things like that. And that was a part of the culture for her. She's a white woman, no problems in her life, as in she didn't have to worry about being stopped by the police and questioned about where she's going and what she's doing and why is she going to this place and that. Why is she driving certain kind of vehicles and things like that. In the United States, at least in the 70s and whatnot, it's like, white women didn't have to worry about all that. Okay? After the 70s, I would say. And even acknowledging other people's experience was not her business, right? Like they even, would even go that far as it's like, well, it's not like I don't believe what you're saying, but it's just not my business. What am I to do? I'm just a white woman, right? And that to me was a form of self-slavery. It's like, well, how can you on one end believe whatever the founding fathers talked about, but then you hear and see and witness all these things and know a lot of these things? Like, these are the same people who would go to plantations and have parties at them. Like, did y'all not realize that those were like slave internment camps? Those were factory farms. Those were work, like factory, like prison camps. Those were prison camps. Okay? Like, I don't like using the word plantation anymore. Those were straight up prison camps. I mean, I would also, I'm probably going to make a list of books that I know I need to be reading, but I've heard of over the last few months that leads into, that fed into the transatlantic slave route. It became big business to traffic people because of all things, sugar. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. It's like the sugar trade is the reason why chattel slavery, that amongst other things, of course, but I'm just saying that the want in the demand for sugar, like cane sugar, drove chattel slavery. Okay. And amongst other things. But the whole idea of believing things that are in, when it's convenient for you, and just pretending like it's not your business, and it's like, oh, well, it's not my business. It's their history, not my history. It's like, but we didn't choose that history. It's your history. Okay? And this is what I am going to say about Black History Month. It's not necessarily, it is for Black people, but it's also for white people, because that's your history too, that they kept telling you to ignore, to not pay attention to. This is how you got to be where you are as a privileged class of people in the United States. This is how. But yet kept saying, as long, like, I feel like what's playing out right now with our current presidency is basically how the United States kind of functioned for the last 250 years since, the Revolutionary War and stuff. As long as you just keep saying a thing long enough, they believe that makes it true. Things like, well, why can't they, people who look like me, why can't they just, pick themselves off their bootstraps and all the stuff and work hard like we did? We worked hard. It's like, you didn't, though. You didn't, though. So that's the thing. The reason why you got those things that you got was through some things like, the New Deal after World War II, mostly. Because I'm going to tell you, like, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'm also, I don't know, jumping around a little bit. But the thing is, I feel like the institution of slavery and the institution or the system of racism not just enslaved people who look like me, but they enslaved people who call themselves white into having this mentality that is not true. Not on the sheer fact of superiority, but this whole ideal of freedom is just automatic, and as long as we just hand you something here, then you can feel free, when really you're not free. You're really not. You think you are, but you're not. And as long as somebody else is lower than you, then you can be free. So that's kind of where I'm coming with that. Then there's the, like I said, there's the spiritual, philosophical element. It's like there's a lot of people on the road today. What is happening? Um, and this is where I think part of it is the United States mentality of like rugged individuality and cowboyness. And I mean, I could tell you some stuff about the myth of the cowboy, which really, maybe I should tell you that anyway. All right, so let me tell you the myth, because I really don't like it that it seems like people take over some things and then claim it as their own. All right, so back in the Western kind of expansion of the United States, let me go into that. Yeah, it was basically a big old land grab. After they took parts of Mexico, I think that was out of an agreement because Mexico owed the United States money. So it's not like they just took it, but I think it was to settle a debt. But there were still people who were of um, Mexican descent, legitly, Native people, legitly, and United States just redrew borders around those folks. And that's what, to me, that's one of the things that's really strange, in that once they acquired that last bit of land that is the continental United States, um, they, it turned into what's happening right now. It's like people trying to run people off of land and steal from each other. That is literally why we have the saying, the wild, wild west. Okay, again, there is something going on today. There's a lot of traffic, a lot of people out there. So yeah. So as the United States acquired that land, I guess for whatever reason, legally, I guess they bought it, or it was to settle a debt. But the people on the land, that's a whole other story, right? So there are people who were looking to settle in small towns, look for the minerals, because there's silver, I believe, in Colorado. There was gold, of course, in California, and all the stuff in between. Oopsies, sorry, sir. I don't know. Things are happening. Okay, Mr. Popo is on it today. I don't know what's happening. Okay, okay. All right, sorry. All right, so um the acquiring of, I guess, the land, by the nation is one thing, but then the acquiring of the land physically is yet the other. So treaties were broken, of course, with the natives. People who were of Mexican descent, legitly living there, um, were slowly but surely being run off the land because the United States bought it. But then it's like, but I still live here, so things like that was happening. And even Black people were, and this is, and I had to fight people. I'm gonna just be honest. I had to literally argue people down about the Civil War, and they keep saying it was about states' rights. So it's like, yeah, to own slaves, y'all. So as they were expanding, then at the time, states like Missouri and Kansas and stuff, they were, becoming states. They were growing because, again, of all this, expansion of land. I know this turned into a history lesson. Sorry, y'all. An expansion of land. Uh, States were trying to become states, and they were also trying to decide, like, are we going to be a free state, or are we going to be a chattel slavery state? Okay, meaning, are we going to use trafficked people to grow crops, or to and have industrial things made there? Okay. So the West was wild because, yeah, Black people were free over there. And what had happened was, yeah, once Black people realized they can go to the West and be free over there, they started, acquiring land too and gaining, resources. And some decided to go into the cattle industry, and they were called cattlemen, okay, originally. All of them, all races, cattlemen, okay, because it's cattle. Now, because some who were white did not like to acknowledge any black man as a man, they would always try to refer to people as boy. This is where the term cowboy came from. Okay? Cowboy. This is where it came from. And so now, I only say this recently because I did have a lesson with my second graders like a month ago about culture and what do people from outside of the United States think of our culture. And I saw a symbol for a cowboy, and I was like, and of course the cowboy was white, and I was like, mm, interesting. Yeah. So anyway, so that's my little short history lesson. And it's like, just because a thing is what, I mean, as children, I'll just say this, as children, a lot of us were not taught to have what is called critical thinking skills. We were taught that this is it and this is it how it is. You follow your religion, you follow the things that your parents did, and that is that. Don't divert. Don't don't rock the boat. Don't do all the other things, right? And we're now at shaky grounds, in my opinion. We're in shaky grounds, and where a lot of information is coming out that I don't even say was hidden. It wasn't hidden. It's like people were, I don't even want to call them lazy. You don't know what you don't know. There's that. You don't know what you don't know. So I can't be mad at people who never knew what chattel slavery is, and that, a group of, and it's always a group of white men that want to keep power. Doesn't it sound familiar right now? That a group of white men who come together in smoky back rooms and devise these evil plots to take over the world, like it happens over and over and over again. It's happening now, to have world domination, right? It's like, as long as you get your little, I don't know, little piece of the pie, then don't worry about the rest. Don't worry your pretty little heads or whatever. You get a little something. As long as you're right above the person below you, then you are A-okay. That's the slavery. Okay? They want to, trick you into believing that everything's fine as long as you have your little thing. But don't let that person over there, they're trying to steal your stuff, but really they're trying to manipulate you into keeping status quo. That's the slavery. Okay? And I think right now, yeah, it's hard to think. I don't want to say think for yourself. I think a lot of Americans, now I'm going to jump around again too, sorry. A lot of Americans have been taught to revere, respect a person, a person, sometimes an entity, but mostly a person. And when you realize that your heroes are flawed, or that your heroes were complex, then it's like, well, who do we worship? That's why there's still a lot of hero worship now, where people are like, reverting back into a lot of things like superheroes and comic books and all this other stuff. They're lost. They're looking for a hero, somebody to look up to. They're lost. And it's just more complicated than that. It takes work. It takes real work to be your own person. Even as an artist, as a creative person, it takes real work to do what is not expected of you. It takes real work to speak up for what you believe in instead of following the crowd just because that's what everybody else expects of you and thinks that that's what is whatever is the norm. And I'm not saying be provocative on purpose, but if you have something you need to say, then say it. You know? I mean, that's really it. It's like we can't be slaves to systems that never worked for everybody. Why are we being slaves to systems that never worked for everyone? I guess because we also were in a system that made it seem comfortable for some, just enough to keep them silent. It's like buying their silence, buying their complete like complicity or whatever, you know. There's that. Seriously, I don't know what is happening. I really would like I'm looking at the time right now. I would have been at my destination already. I don't know what's going on in the city today. It's a lot of cars. But the weather is nice. There's that. So, you know, usually when the weather is nice and it's a weekend and it's a holiday weekend because it's Valentine's Day, I guess, you know, um, then that means the traffic's backed up. I could, oh my gosh. Oh, Lord. I should have, I don't know. And I don't have back roads anymore. I'm sad. I'm mourning that too. This is almost a back road, but it's not today because I don't know what happened. Anyway, yes, I'm going to probably listen to the rest of that lecture probably right now because apparently there's so many cars out here today. But I did just want to say, it's like, if you have the mind to question authority, I'm not saying riot against authority, question authority, like have critical thinking skills. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay? And if you decide then that's what you want to do is go back and believe the things, then okay, that's cool. But like I said, I've literally seen people over the last almost 12 years of so evolve in their thinking with more information, with more perspective, exposure. Um, I think there is some benefit to social media, but then there's also, you know, people working the system. And I think a lot of people are going to get off of social media. That's my prediction. And they need to. I haven't been on it in so long. I'm I had to make myself get on there just for the sake of getting myself ready to promote music and things that I'm doing as a musician. Okay? But yeah. Oh, I'm getting tired. Yeah. And with that, yes, I'm going to go listen to the rest of this lecture and hopefully get to my destination in 10 minutes or so, I hope. But I don't know what happened out here. All right. Bye, y'all. Bye.